December 1938. A fishing boat returns to a quiet South African harbor. Inside its nets, the usual catch: sharks, rays, the broken debris of the sea. But underneath it all, something else. A museum curator named Marjorie picks through the slime, and what she finds will not make sense. Thick, armor-like scales, 4 strange, fleshy fins, limbs almost, a tail like nothing alive on Earth. For 70 years, every textbook on the planet agreed on one thing: this animal was extinct, gone 65 million years ago, wiped out in the same apocalypse that erased the Tyrannosaurus. They were wrong. And the truth of how this extinct fish survived, hidden, unseen, undetected by all of human science for 65 million years, is far stranger and far darker than anyone expected. This is the story of the Coelacanth, the fish that refused to die. To understand how terrifying this story really is, you have to go back. Not centuries, not millennia, 410 million years. Before the dinosaurs, before the trees, before anything walked on land at all. The oceans belonged to the Coelacanth's ancestors. This was not just another fish. This was a blueprint. Look closely at those fins. They are not like a tuna's. They are not like a shark's. They are thick, muscular, jointed, almost like the beginning of an arm, a leg, a shoulder. Scientists believe creatures like this one were among the first vertebrates to ever experiment with crawling onto land. The ancestors of every reptile, every bird, every mammal, every human being who has ever lived. For 200 million years, the Coelacanth's lineage thrived. They swam in the same oceans as giant sea scorpions. They watched the first amphibians crawl out of the shallows. They survived not one, but multiple mass extinctions that wiped out over 90% of all life on Earth. By the time the dinosaurs ruled the land above, the Coelacanths had already been swimming these oceans for over 300 million years. They didn't just survive the age of the dinosaurs. They were already ancient, before the first dinosaur ever existed. And then they vanished. The asteroid that ended the dinosaurs also rewrote the fossil record of nearly every species on the planet. And somewhere in that chaos, the Coelacanth fossils simply stop. For nearly 200 years, paleontologists dug through rock layer after rock layer. Devonian, Jurassic, Cretaceous, Coelacanth fossils everywhere. And then the Cretaceous ends, and the fossils disappear completely. Not rare, not scarce, gone, completely. For 65 million years straight, not one single trace. To any scientist, that is not ambiguous evidence. That is a verdict. By the 1930s, the Coelacanth had become one of the most famous proof of extinction stories taught in classrooms around the world. A perfect, tidy example of evolution's casualties. But here's the part the textbooks never explained. The absence of a fossil is not proof of death. It is only proof that nobody found the body. While the world believed this creature had died with the dinosaurs, it had simply gone somewhere humans could not follow, hundreds of meters down, into freezing, crushing, lightless water, into volcanic caves carved into underwater cliffs. It didn't go extinct, it went into hiding. A trawler captain named Hendrik Goosen drags his nets up from 40 fathoms, roughly 70 meters down, near the mouth of the Chalumna River. He has no idea what he's about to pull into the light. At the East London Museum, a young curator named Marjorie Courtenay-Latimer gets the call. She has asked local fishermen for years to alert her to anything unusual. She picks away at the layers of slime to reveal what she will later call the most beautiful fish I had ever seen. 5 feet long, pale, mauve blue, covered in hard armored scales, with 4 strange limb-like fins, and a tail unlike anything she has ever studied. She doesn't know what it is, but she knows, somehow, that it matters. She sketches it, preserves it the only way she can, and sends word to a South African chemistry professor and amateur ichthyologist named J.L.B. Smith. Weeks pass before he sees it in person. When he finally does, witnesses say the man nearly collapses. Smith was not exaggerating. He had just confirmed the impossible. A living, breathing descendant of a creature that vanished from the fossil record 65 million years before the first human ever existed. He named it Latimeria after Marjorie, the species name Chalumne after the river where it was caught. The story exploded across the globe. a dinosaur fish, a living fossil. Proof that something humanity had buried for 65 million years had been alive the entire time, just beyond our reach. But here is where the story turns from wonder into obsession. Because there was a problem, a devastating one. By the time Marjorie's specimen reached scientists, it had already begun to rot in the African heat. The internal organs, the soft tissue that could prove exactly what this creature was, how it bred, how it lived, had been discarded before anyone understood their value. What remained was a skin, a skeleton, a ghost of the animal that mattered most. Smith had proof the impossible existed, but he had no second body, no soft tissue, no way to truly study a living coelacanth. And without one, the rest of the scientific world could simply call it a fluke, an anomaly, a single, freak survivor in an empty ocean. J.L.B. Smith became a man possessed. He printed leaflets, wanted posters, not for an outlaw, for a fish. Smith offered a reward of 100 British pounds for any fisherman who brought him a second specimen. To put that in perspective, 100 pounds in 1939 was close to a year's wages for the average subsistence fisherman along that coastline. It was an almost unthinkable sum. Smith scattered those posters across thousands of kilometers of African and Indian Ocean coastline. Mozambique, Madagascar, Kenya. Every harbor town, every trading post, every fishing village he could reach. He wrote letters by the hundreds. He badgered shipping captains. He pleaded with colonial governments to distribute his leaflets along trade routes most Europeans had never set foot on. And then, nothing. Smith aged years, searching for an animal the rest of the world had already filed away as a one-time miracle. Colleagues began to doubt him. Some quietly suggested the first specimen had been some grotesque mutation, a 1 in a billion deformity, not proof of a hidden breeding population. He refused to believe it. He was certain that somewhere along this coastline, in waters no scientist had ever surveyed, an entire population of these creatures was still alive. He just didn't know where to look. He didn't know it yet, but the answer had been sitting in plain sight the entire time. While European science spent 65 million years believing this creature was extinct, the fishermen of the Comoro Islands had been pulling it out of the water for generations. They had a name for it, Gombessa. It roughly translates to worthless fish. Some accounts say it meant something closer to taboo, because to them, this fish that would one day stun the entire scientific world was garbage. Its flesh oozed thick, oily mucus that ruined the rest of the catch. Eating it caused violent stomach illness. The flesh is saturated with oil, urea, and waxy compounds the human body cannot properly digest. For generations, when a Comorian fisherman hauled up a Gombessa by accident, he didn't celebrate, he didn't study it, he cursed his luck and threw it back into the sea, or fed it to no one at all. While museums in London and Paris and New York hung extinction charts on their walls, declaring this creature a prehistoric ghost, fishing villages a few hundred miles away were quietly catching it, gutting it, and discarding it as inedible trash. The impossible discovery of the century had already happened, repeatedly, for decades, maybe centuries. Nobody with a scientific degree had simply been there to see it. This is the dark irony buried at the center of the entire Coelacanth story. Western science didn't discover a hidden species. It discovered its own blind spot. 14 years after Marjorie Courtenay-Latimer's discovery, a Comorian fisherman named Ahmadi Abdallah pulls something strange from the water off the island of Anjouan. He doesn't know it, but he is holding the second proof in human history that the Coelacanth survived. Word reaches a local schoolteacher who alerts colonial officials. The specimen is identified, and a telegram is fired off to J.L.B. Smith with the news he has waited 14 years to hear. But there is a problem, a brutal one. Smith is in South Africa. The fish is rotting, hundreds of kilometers away, on a French colonial island, with no direct flight, no fast ship, no time to lose. Without proper preservation, this second body, the one piece of evidence that could finally silence every skeptic, will decay into uselessness within days. So Smith does something almost unthinkable. He goes over the heads of scientists, over the heads of museums, directly to the most powerful man in South Africa, The Prime Minister of South Africa personally authorizes a military aircraft, diverted from official duty, to fly directly into French colonial territory and retrieve the specimen before it spoils. This is no longer simply a scientific expedition. It has become a matter of international diplomacy. A government redirecting military resources for a single decaying fish because the man who found it has convinced an entire country's leadership that the find is worth a small fortune in national pride. When Smith finally lays eyes on the second specimen, witnesses describe him weeping openly on the tarmac. 14 years, thousands of letters, an entire scientific reputation gambled on the belief that something the world had declared dead was still breathing in the dark. He had been right the entire time, but here is the detail that should unsettle you most. The fishermen who actually lived beside this impossible creature were never confused, never amazed, never even particularly interested. To them, the only mystery was why anyone from the other side of the world would pay a fortune for a fish they'd been throwing back for generations. Now that scientists finally had a body to study, what they found inside it was almost more disturbing than the discovery itself. Because the coelacanth is not built like any fish alive today. It is built like a survivor from another geological age. A creature engineered by 300 million years of total isolation from the rest of evolution's experiments. Start with the skull. Nearly every vertebrate on Earth, every fish, every reptile, every human being has a skull that is a single fused structure. The coelacanth does not. Its skull is split by a hinge, a joint running straight through the middle of its head, allowing the entire front of its skull, including its jaw and brain case, to swing upward like a trapdoor. No other living animal on this planet hunts this way. This hinge allows the coelacanth to snap its jaws open to an almost grotesque width in a fraction of a second, generating massive suction that drags prey directly into its throat before the victim has any chance to react. It is a mouth built like a trapdoor into oblivion, and the strangeness doesn't end there. Cut open almost any backboned animal, and you will find a spine, a column of individual vertebrae stacked like building blocks. The coelacanth doesn't have one. In place of a true vertebral column, it carries something almost every other vertebrate abandons before it is even born: a notochord, a flexible, fluid-filled tube that runs the entire length of its body. In the coelacanth, that tube is packed full of oil. It is, quite literally, swimming on a spine made of fat, and the strangeness goes deeper still, into the one organ that should, by all logic, allow this fish to breathe air. Millions of years ago, the coelacanth's ancestors had a working lung, a real one, capable of pulling oxygen directly from the air, possibly one of the very same traits that allowed its relatives to eventually crawl onto land and become us. But the modern coelacanth abandoned that path entirely. Its lung is still there, but it no longer breathes air. It has been repurposed, packed solid with fat, transformed into a buoyancy organ to help this creature hover, motionless, in the crushing darkness of the deep. It is an organ for breathing that forgot how to breathe, repurposed instead to survive a world of pressure that would crush a human body instantly. 200 meters down, the water pressure alone is enough to collapse a human lung in seconds. There is no sunlight here, no warmth. Temperatures hover just above freezing, and the coelacanth doesn't merely survive in this crushing abyss, it thrives in it. Its brain case tells the same story of radical adaptation. Scientists who have studied it found something almost impossible to believe. In an adult coelacanth, only 1.5% of the entire brain case is actual brain tissue. The rest, nearly the entire cavity, is packed with fat. This is not a creature built for intelligence, or speed, or aggression. It is a creature built for one purpose only: to endure, to use as little energy as physically possible, for as long as physically possible, in an environment designed to kill almost everything else that enters it. And when it does feed, it doesn't chase. It drifts on ocean currents with barely a flick of its fins, conserving every fraction of energy until its electrosensory organ detects the faint electrical pulse of a living heartbeat in the blackness ahead. Then, in less than a single second, that hinged skull snaps open and the prey is gone. It can live for nearly a century. It carries its young inside its body for almost 3 years. the longest gestation period of any vertebrate on Earth. It does almost nothing fast, except kill, and that combination, patience, isolation, and almost unimaginable physiological efficiency, is exactly how it survived everything that should have ended it. While the world above it changed completely, continents drifted, ice ages came and went, an asteroid ended the age of giants. The coelacanth simply sank below the reach of change itself. It didn't outsmart extinction. It hid from it, in a body engineered, almost perfectly, for nothing else but staying hidden. Today, we know the coelacanth survived, but survived is a generous word. Scientists now estimate as few as 500 West Indian Ocean coelacanths remain on the entire planet. It is officially classified as critically endangered, a creature that outlasted the dinosaurs, that survived an asteroid capable of ending 90% of all life on Earth, that hid successfully from human science for 65 million years, may not survive a century of deep-sea trawling, accidental bycatch, and a warming, polluted ocean. The very depths that protected it for hundreds of millions of years are no longer beyond our reach. Our nets go deeper now. Our machines see further into the dark. The hiding place that worked for 65 million years is running out of room to hide. And that is the real warning buried inside this story. We tell ourselves that extinction is loud, a flash of fire in the sky, a sudden mass grave written into the rock. But the coelacanth proves something far more unsettling. Sometimes a species doesn't die where you can see it. Sometimes it simply goes quiet, slips into the dark, and the world simply stops noticing it was ever there at all. For 65 million years, we were wrong about the coelacanth. Not because it vanished, but because we stopped looking in the dark places. And when we finally did look, the truth had been sitting in a fishing net the entire time, dismissed as worthless by the very people who knew it best. The history books still call countless creatures extinct, but the ocean is the largest unexplored territory left on this planet. We have mapped more of the surface of Mars than we have mapped the deep sea floor of our own world. So the next time you hear that a creature has died out, ask yourself what the coelacanth would tell you. Maybe it isn't gone. Maybe it's just waiting in the dark. If this story disturbed you, good. It should. The history they taught you is full of gaps, just like this one. Subscribe to Origin Beasts, because somewhere out there, in the dark corners of this planet's past, there are more creatures waiting to be found, and we are going to find every single one of them.